So this is an LG, or literally garbage, dryer. It started smelling like it was burning last night, and I suspect it's probably because I haven't cleaned it out in a while. It's probably got um, it's probably got a bunch of lint built up in it. So I'm gonna crack this thing open and check it out. It's also got a roller that I think is going in it. So I'm gonna probably pull it apart and do a partial rebuild on it, since I'm going to have it apart to clean it. Um, if you don't already do this, it's something that's important to do. You need to clean the lint out of these every once in a while, and it's not something that you can really do without taking it apart. If you don't, yes, it can build up in there, and eventually, yeah, it can cause a fire. We're going to tear this thing open and take a look at the condition of it inside, and check out what parts, if any, need to be replaced. All right, so I've got it pulled out here. Disconnected the gas line. This particular unit is a gas model. It's pretty gross under here too. But it's a gas model, so I turned the gas off at the valve, which is just on the other side there. Disconnected it just to make it easier. You don't want to bend those gas lines too much, because they will crack and then they'll leak and you'll have a problem on your hands. The way that these units work, it also goes without saying, make sure you unplug it before you work on it. If you don't know to do that, make sure you do that. The way that these units work, you'd think that you could just take the back off of them, but that's not actually how these things work. You take these, as I recall, and I don't do appliances for a living. This is just something that it's just something that I know how to do over time experience. But you would remove the screws here and take the top off. You don't just take the back off of them. Actually, the back and the bottom are like an integrated piece. It's terrible camera work of mine. But you take the top off, and then the front and the sides kind of come off, which would leave you with the drum. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this off right here, get the top off of it, pull the front and the sides off of it, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've pulled the screws out, and I'll admit I made a mistake in trying to pull this apart. I don't edit out my mistakes because maybe people can learn from them. I attempted to take these screws out thinking that this top would fold up. It actually doesn't do that. The way that this works, if I can get in here, it's kind of like a cantilever bracket. It goes down and under. So there are screws on the bottom here as well as screws on the top. You can't slide this back if you take the top screws out. So I had to put those back in, and I had to take these on the bottom out. Now, because I've done that, it slides back. So see, it slides. So now, once it's slid back, I can just lift this off. So there. Now the top is off of it, so I can see the drum. This is the drive belt right here. Sound deadening material. That's what this black stuff is. And this is really all there is to this thing. And I can see there's an awful lot of play in here. And there should be a little bit. I mean, it does float in here on some rollers, but we'll take a look at it once I get the shell off of this thing. I've got to take a look at this and see how it comes apart. I'm relatively certain the door comes off because there's a couple screws through it there, and there's a couple screws here. So I need to see which one, how many of these screws I got to take out. Probably all of these, I would think, in order to separate this. Not positive, maybe not. Maybe I don't need to take any of these out. I'm not sure. But let me take a look at it here. So here's what we got. You have to take the front panel off. Pretty certain at this point. There's two screws. There's one right there, and there's one there on the other side. And then there's some snaps. As part of this cover, there's some plastic snaps that snap over these little cutouts all along the sheet metal here. So I just popped those off after I took those screws out. This whole thing comes off, and I'm going to disconnect it. It's all connectorized here. So I'm going to disconnect it and get this thing out of here. And then now I can see where the screws are that hold the front of this thing on. So it's pretty simple once I kind of figured it out. I was looking at this thinking this had to come out, but it doesn't. You just take the plastic panel off with these two screws right here. Just about apart here now. So I pulled the panel off. These connections are all color coded apparently. I wasn't too concerned about marking them because you really can't screw it up. The colors match the plugs on the back of the unit. So I just took it off and set it right down there. There's 4 screws up here, 4 sheet metal screws. These ones are longer sheet metal screws. And then I got to looking at this, and it's going to come apart here because I've got all the screws out. But there's 2 screws on the bottom here. So it doesn't look like you need to take these out. I was looking at these. They look more like they might be machine screws, so I didn't want to touch those. I looked at it. It looks like the door was bolted to the front, and it is. So it's these 2 shorter screws and then these 4 longer screws right here. And this should, let me close the door here because it'll make it a little easier. Should, oh, and there's a connection here for the safety switch, the door switch. Let me see how that comes out. So you got a clip. I don't feel a clip. There, yeah, no clip. It just unplugs. And that's that. Look at that. The front comes right off. And I can already see it looks like it's pretty much a mess in here. So the sides are not going to come off of this. It looks to me like I can service the whole thing from the front here. If I need to change the belt or anything, it looks like this. Sorry, it looks like this comes off of here. But yeah, let's take a look at what we got here. And it stinks. It smells like it's burned. So we're going to get in here with a vacuum and clean this out. Maybe try and identify what was burning in here. Do I see something there? Looks like maybe something burned there. I don't know. Let me take a better look at this, and then I'll get back on this here, and we'll identify kind of where the smell is coming from. So I went ahead and I pulled the blower shroud off. That's what this would be here. And I start vacuuming it out a little bit. It had some crud in it. I am noticing, I'm seeing some black stuff here. I don't know if that's burned yet. It looks like it might be. But this is what happens when you let this stuff build up, and I'm no exception. This is one of those things, I know it's a problem, and I still don't do a very good job of keeping up on it, just because life is full of a lot of things going on. But it's important to do it because you could end up with a real problem on your hands. Just because appliances are modern and you don't think anything can happen, it can. You have to go and clean these things out every once in a while. So I think the amount of stuff in here is going to warrant me pulling this completely apart. So I've got to take a look at this, but I think the drum can stay in there. And I'm going to pull the front drum carrier assembly off. That's what I'm calling this, is a carrier assembly. There's rollers. There's a roller here, and there's a roller here. That's what these are. So you see I'm turning that roller. I'm going to check these rollers, see if the bearings are good. It feels like the rubber's still good on them. But I'm going to take this, I'm going to take the front carrier assembly off of here and probably lift the drum out of it, just because that's the only way to get in there and really clean it. So it's these 4 screws right here. I'm not going to be able to hold the camera and show you how to do it because it's just going to be too much. Even with a tripod, there's no room for a tripod in here. But yeah, I'll take these 4 screws out. It lifts off of here. It's pretty obvious how this comes apart. So let me pull this apart. Not too difficult to get apart. There's some kind of a, oh, here it is right here. I bet this is a temperature sensor, possibly some sort. But you have to disconnect that. This is the bottom side. This is where the rollers are. I had to disconnect the light. That's this connector right here. So light, safety switch for the door. And it did lift right out of there, no problem. I'm taking a look at these rollers, and immediately I'm seeing that this one, the bearings are completely dry. So I need to clean that up and lube it. If not, replace the bearing and or the roller. This one seems to spin a little bit freer. So we'll take a look at these. They may be usable. I don't see any chunks missing. They're not cracked or anything like that. You know, most people would probably say just replace them. I don't have any on hand. This one does have a flat spot on it, so I might need to order some rollers for this, and this thing will be apart for a couple of days. But I could always pull it apart again. This isn't too difficult. So, you know, the problem is you don't know what parts you need until you get inside here. I guess you could just kind of preemptively order rollers. Maybe if somebody's watching this and they realize they'll learn something from this, that they need to get some parts before they pull theirs apart. I don't mind pulling mine apart again if I need to, depending on how quick I can get these rollers. May not make any difference. And here we have evidence. I just noticed it happening right here now. So this is definitely something burned here, and this lines up over here. And there it is. Look at that. Nice and toasty. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Oh yeah, that's black. So there we have it. We had a little fire going in here for sure. Yep. Yeah, that's delicious. So, yep, we're going to clean this thing all out. Obviously something got hot here and burned up. Yeah, a bunch of hair and lint and who knows what. Anyways, we'll get this thing cleaned up. Oh yeah. That looks awesome. Okay, so it's become very evident I need to take the drum out of this thing. I got to really looking at this, and it's burned all the way back on the burner there. So it's got to be completely taken apart to be cleaned. I'm going to take the drum out of it. By the looks of it, I think maybe if I take this off up here, I can get the drum out real easily. That's what I think I'm going to do. It's not going to come out the top very easily with some of the stuff that's in the way. I marked it, pointing an arrow in my terrible writing to front. It may not matter. There may not be a front. I don't know. I don't want to find out. I just want to put it back together the way that it came apart. So I went ahead and I pulled, this is the door switch cable, and it had this connector here to hold this is just a wire loom holder. I popped that out because I'm going to be taking the front of this off. So yeah, I'm going to pull this baby off right here, and then I should just be able to lift the drum right out. Oh, and I pulled the belt off. I really can't show a video of that, but there's a tensioner pulley down in here and that you probably can't even see. My hand's down in here. You're just going to have to look at that and kind of figure it out. But the belt goes around the drum. It goes around the smooth side of the belt. Goes on the tensioner this way. So the tensioner is pushing that direction to tension the belt, which then wraps under the back of the blower motor pulley that's on the back there. I'll show it once I get the drum out. It'll be a lot easier to see it. All right, exactly as I suspected. You take this lateral support right here off. It's got more of those hooks that hold it on as well, so you don't have to play with it when putting it back together. You just hook it back in and then put the screws in. I've started putting the screws back in the holes that they came out of just because there's so many darn screws on this thing. I'm going to lose track. So here it is. Yeah, it definitely burned. It's just too much of it. There's just too much dirt, and it just completely went up. I'm surprised, honestly, that I didn't smell it till I got in here. So this is the gas jet valve right here. So this turns the valve on. That looks like there's a regulator here, which shoots gas into here. Down in here is your igniter. That's a hot surface igniter in there. So that thing gets red hot. There's probably a photo eye. There it is right there, I think. Yep. This is a little optical eye. So the way that this works is this thing gets hot, and this eye is looking for the light. And when it sees the infrared coming off of the hot surface igniter, that triggers this thing to open up this valve here, and then this valve will turn on the gas. So it's electric igniter triggered by a photo eye that then turns on the gas valve. And then this is the blower right here. So this is blowing the air. It's actually sucking the way that this works. So it's going to pull the hot air from there through the drum, through here, and then this goes straight out to the exhaust. So it's a really simple device. You know, you heat the air here, it sucks it through, blower pushes out the hot air. And then this is the tensioner that I was talking about, and they use the same motor to drive, which is pretty, typical in these things. I think dryers are pretty much the same as they have been for years. The back side drives the belt, and the front side drives the blower. This here is a little motor that keeps the fan that keeps the motor cool, and this is the tensioner. So the way, again, if I can explain this without the belt being on here, the belt is going to wrap around here, and the tensioner is going to be pushing on it like this. So it's going to wrap down, under, over the top, this direction towards my left. It's going to wrap around there. It's going to go around the drum. So this is keeping pressure. If it was a loop like this, the tensioner would be pushing on the side of the loop. That's how that works. Then we got more rollers. So there's 4 rollers total. Here they are right here. These are not in horrible shape. Probably just need to be cleaned and lubed, but if I'm going to order them, I'm just going to get them all. And let me see, what else do we have here? I might have been mistaken. Now this might be the eye. That's what this looks like, I bet. This is probably what's detecting the igniter being on, the hot surface igniter. Maybe this one's for flame. I bet this one might be for flame. I'm not sure. There is a schematic here. I'll have to take a look at it, but I don't have a diagram or an assembly of what is what on here. But anyways, that's pretty much how these things work. So it's actually not as bad inside as I thought, but it sure is bad on top of this burner. You don't want any dirt on top of this burner here, because you'll end up with this. I mean, it's obvious that it went up last night. So we'll get this vacuumed out really well, get it nice and clean, maybe even wipe it down. And let me see about what parts I might need. I think this belt's getting a little bit crusty. So definitely, if you're going to order parts for one of these, don't come unprepared like I did. Get the model number off of it. I'll get the model number for you for this thing in the end, just so you know if you have the same unit. But they're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty much built the same. So you want to get new rollers and a new belt if you're going to go through the trouble of tearing this thing apart. So it took me a minute to realize where the part number was for this thing. It's on the inside of the door, duh. And that upper number there is the serial number, model number DLG55988W. So there you go. If you have, and I suspect similar model numbers are probably the same thing. And like I said, most of these dryers are pretty much the same, but that's the model number of this particular dryer. Now I can go online and find some parts for it. So parts are on order now. Amazon, it was $37 plus tax. Shipping here tomorrow. Couldn't get same day delivery. I'm in the LA area, so it's typically pretty easy to get stuff relatively easily. But yeah, I could get everything I need tomorrow, so I don't even have to go out and try and find this stuff anywhere. And it was a whole kit, so it includes the rollers, 4 rollers, a new belt, and a new tensioner and spring. So I get to replace all the stuff that kind of typically wears out all in one kit. Probably made in China, but it's what's available, and I'm sure that there probably isn't anything available that's made here, parts for this anyways. So I cleaned this up. I vacuumed it out real good. I wiped off the eye. So this is the eye here. This is a temperature switch, I think, or probably a high limit cutoff. So if it gets too hot, if there's too much heat, there's no airflow, this thing probably opens up and shuts off the gas valve. That would be my guess. I'm just trying to analyze it kind of as I look at it. I don't really know for sure, but I'm pretty certain that's what that is. It's not an optical sensor. Once I got the dirt off of it, I could see that it wasn't, but this is. So this is that hot surface igniter detection right here. And these typically probably don't go bad, but the hot surface igniters do. I very carefully tried to vacuum this out in here. You don't want to hit this thing. It gets heat cycled all the time, and it gets brittle. So if you touch that, if you bump it, it's just going to break off. I'm going to check it real good just to make sure I didn't break it. But yeah, that's a real problem with these. So you got to watch out for that. Not to keep on going on with this thing, but you know, this thing's cool. I just love how simple these are, and other than probably the microcontroller that's in the unit that actually runs this thing, but the simplicity, you know, if the belt breaks, this is normally up here. If the belt breaks, there's a switch, see? And it shuts it down. I started looking at the schematic here, and it's just pretty cool. I love stuff like this. So anyways, that's just another little feature that's on here. I also noticed there's another sensor here down the bottom that looks like this one. I haven't quite figured that out yet. I don't know if it like looks across to the other one, but they're not optical. So I don't know what that's for. I don't know if there's like some kind of a heat detection. It probably does some kind of a heat differential detection or something on either side. Who knows? I might be making that more complicated than it is, but it's got two, looks like temperature sensors to me, maybe thermistors. Not sure. Anyways, that's just a little bit more on some of the cool stuff that's in here. So the kit just arrived next day. Came with the rollers. I didn't get to looking at these. I didn't look at the old ones, and they are the same. I didn't realize these are just a plain bearing. There's no ball bearings in here. And I'm going to look and see if it came with any guidance in here. So it's got all the rollers, tensioner, new tensioner spring, and a new belt. And I wonder if we're supposed to oil these. I don't... There are many YouTube videos for dryer repair. Well, there's going to be one more. Prevent heating element from burning up. You must clean the lint. Duh. Specifications. Yeah, I wouldn't think you would want to put oil in here. It might just attract dirt. So I'm going to assume that you don't put any in here. It's just a machine bearing, just a plain bearing. So, yeah, those are probably why they wear out. All right, well, this is, like I said, this is the kit. I got it from Amazon, $37. So, I'm going to get started on replacing the rollers. It's a 14 millimeter on this side and a 10 millimeter on this side. I'm going to make quick work of it. I got one of these electric ratchets. I love this thing. It'll make quick work of that. These on the rear, I was looking at those, and it looks to me like I can get to it with a box wrench or combo wrench underneath it. There is room in these recesses over here. So I'm going to get that, and I'll do that one, and then the other unit, the front carrier, that one will be real easy to do. So not a whole lot to show there. I'm going to go ahead and swap those out, and then we'll move on to explaining how to replace the tensioner after that. All right, swapped out now. I got to looking at the old ones. They were lubricated. I can tell by looking at them, they're sticky. So I'm probably going to get some, I've got some synthetic motor oil, 30 weight, that's in a can already. It's probably as good as anything. I'm going to put a couple of drips on each one of these for sure. Yeah, I can't imagine the way these are set up that they wouldn't have any lubrication in them, but there's no seals, so they're going to get dirty and they're going to gum up after a year or two, I'm sure. So it's probably something to keep an eye on. They're so cheap, though. You just might as well replace them every year. But yeah, so I swapped them out. Another note, it only came with one washer, and they're thin, and they're not a larger like USS type washer versus an SAE washer. I used the old washers, used the new nuts though. The old nuts, it came with new nuts. These are lock nuts. They have a locking thing on them. They're really only good for one use. So don't use the old ones. Use the new nuts that it came with, but use the old washers. So yeah, got them swapped out now. The next thing we're going to take a look at here is the tensioner. looks pretty simple to me. It looks like that's probably a 10 millimeter. I'm relatively certain just by looking at it. That's 10, and this is the spring here. So doing this one-handed, but I was able to get it off of there, so probably don't need to replace the spring, but it's a good idea. You know, they get weak. So let me pull this off, and I've got the new tensioner here. It's all, you don't have to change the wheel or anything. It comes with a new arm, so real easy. Just pull that bolt out, put the new one in there, tighten the bolt back up. It looks like it's shouldered too, so you can't over tighten it, so it stays loose. That's what it looks like to me. So I do want to show this real quick. So this is what I mean by this is shouldered. So you could over tighten it and strip it out, but you can't, you know, over tighten it and prevent the arm from moving in there. That keeps the arm floating. The other thing that I noticed is it is greased. So I'm going to wipe this down, and I'm going to use a little bit of, I don't imagine they use moly grease. I think it's just black from age, dirt, and rubbing the metal together. I'm going to put a little white lith on there. This just a little bit is all you need, and then I'll reassemble it. Here's something you don't see every day. Made in USA. This is my grandfather's, and I have a few of these that he left me. Really well made. You know, nothing's made this well anymore. Sorry, I'm just rambling here, but you know, this is good quality stuff. Nobody makes anything like it anymore. So anyways, I'm going to put just a drop in here. Probably needs it. It's a little hard to do one-handed. Over-oiled it a little bit, but that's okay. I'd rather wipe it up. Much better. And that is going to attract dirt. So I would rather... Whoops. How did I do that? All right. I'd rather have them lubed and get dirty and have to clean it every once in a while and have it dry, because it's going to get noisy and it could gall. I don't know if it's designed to have lube or not, but the old ones look like they were. So I did those two, and we'll come over here and we'll just put a drop in each one of these. Doesn't need much. There, just a little bit. See how they're getting quieter? So I'd rather lube them. Somebody will probably tell me that I'm wrong, but I don't care. And I also noticed the tensioner doesn't have anything too, and it's not a bearing, so you want to be careful. You don't want to get it on the belt surface. So I'm just going to put a little bit in there, and I'm going to wipe it up when I'm done. So, all right. The next thing that's going to happen here is reassembly. So I'm not going to film the whole reassembly. You saw how it comes apart. I can't do it one-handed. No room for tripod. So I'll put it back together, and we're going to test it out after that. Also worth noting real quick, put the belt on once you set the drum in there. Don't put the front of it on first, because then you're going to have to try and sneak it in there. You have to have it around the drum first. So it's just a quick tip there. Just about ready to put the front carrier back on. Don't forget to hook up I have now figured out it's the moisture sensor. So don't forget to hook that up. And I think it's easier to put the belt on even though the drum isn't fully supported. I think it's easier to put the belt and the tensioner on. There's just no way that I can show you how to do that. You got to get your hand in there. It's just, remember that the belt comes down this way from this side and wraps behind that tensioner under the pulley on the back there. Make sure you get it in the pulley, centered in the pulley and around. Okay. So that's how you remember you do it. So remember that, as I mentioned before, the tensioner is pushing on this side of the belt, that direction. So you got to lift it up, put the belt in front of it, and then have it push on it. So we'll put the carrier in next. Progressing very nicely now. I've got the blower shroud back on. I vacuumed it out real well. I hooked the light back up. It's easier to get to it right now. Put the loom back in this hole right here. Feeds down through here. This is for the door switch. And I'm starting to put the front back on the door. It's worth noting that this sits on these little tabs down here, make it really easy to put this thing together. So that way this will just fold right up into place. So this will be the next thing. I'll screw this on, and then I'm going to put the front panel on it, and then I'm going to pause there. I'm going to leave the top off, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to hook the gas line back up and run it. And that's just so I can see how the belt's tracking, make sure nothing's rubbing or anything, and then I can put the cover back on it. All right, we'll give it a little test drive here. I just plugged it in. I don't have the gas hooked up because if I hook the gas up, then I can't get to the back to put the screws on and for the top. And I want to watch it run before I do that. So I don't need to see the ignition of the burner. I just want to hear the rollers and watch the belt for a minute. So let's see, we'll have to close the door and I'll just press start. Hey, and there it goes. And it sounds really good. It's much quieter than it was. There's no thumps anymore. I don't hear any rubbing. I'd say we've got a good repair here. It's working just perfectly. So yeah, new rollers make a big difference. I didn't even realize how loud this thing was until I threw some rollers in it. So, all right, we'll get the gas hooked back up, and I've already got some stuff to throw in it. All done, and I had some stuff to throw in there already. So, perfect. I'll tell you what, it's so quiet. I mean, you'll see if you do this job on this thing, the rollers, especially if they got a flat spot on them, it makes a big difference. It sounds like brand new. So I bet this thing will run another 10 years. You know, I was kind of facetious when I was calling it literally garbage. You know, it's not built as well as the old Whirlpools. It's definitely lighter gauge steel. Other than the fact that it's got this digital control, which I don't like because that's really the only thing that go wrong with it. You know, it's got, you know, it's pretty basic. It's got a motor, rollers in it. You know, it's not built as well as the older ones, but this thing's like 10 or 15 years old, so it's still running strong. It just needs a little help every once in a while, and every dryer is going to need that. When you mix dirt and mechanical components, it will wear stuff out. So, and on top of it, you know, we had the fire issue. So, you know, go in, make sure you clean these things out.